Do you perceive training as a task, a burdensome routine to get into shape? Are you maybe tired of closed rooms and monotonous workouts under artificial lights? If you have been longing for a more enjoyable approach to getting healthier, then you are here in the right place. In today's episode, we're going to delve into the interesting correlation between health, happiness, and the well-being of our planet. Discover how engaging in fun activities not only improve your health, but also promote a resilient and strong body, all while connecting with the earth. I'm thrilled to introduce you to our amazing guest, Allison Frueh, joining us from Austin, Texas, USA. Allison will share the definition of natural movement, which includes a variety of activities such as running, lifting, carrying, climbing, balancing, jumping, and ground movement. She is a powerhouse of energy and happiness. Passionate about what she does, she's redefined the term REWILD, a concept we'll explore in detail during our conversation. As a MoveNat L3 trainer, forest therapy guide, and play facilitator, she organizes incredible get-togethers like Recess Time for Adults, where they can rediscover the joy of play and be like kids again. Check out her Instagram, where followers, including myself, are always amazed at her swift and elegant tree climbing skills, regardless of the tree's shape, size, or height. Get ready to be inspired by this incredible guest, Allison. You are listening to Health, Happiness, and Planet podcast, where we explore different ways to boost our well-being, live a more fulfilling life, and protect our planet. Join me as I chat with inspiring people and professionals from all over the world, uncovering strategies for improving our lifestyles and nurturing our precious planet. I am Juan, and this podcast is proudly brought to you by Wave Business Excellence Footprint, my digital training company that cares about your career and personal development. I am passionate about making the world a better place, so if you share my enthusiasm, this show is for you. Together, we can steer towards a healthier, happier life while leaving a positive footprint on our beautiful Earth. Join me as we explore how being healthy, happy, and caring for our planet are all connected. Hello, Allison, and welcome to the Health, Happiness, and Planet podcast. It's so great to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I've been checking your Instagram account since a couple of months, and I always have to smile at the things that you do because I'm thinking, wow, you're really breaking a lot of, I would say, mental barriers that people have because people think, oh, I need to get fit. That means I need to go to a gym, get a membership. And if I don't make it to the gym, then I did not get to train today. So that's usually the way how a lot of people think, that if you don't have that 1 hour, maybe even 1.5 or 2 hours time, because you need half an hour to drive to the gym, you need time to get dressed and put your sports clothes, then you train, and then you have to drive back. So you're thinking like, oh my gosh, that's so much to do. I will not make it today. But in reality, you got the gym just outside of your doorstep, and it's closer than you actually think it is, and it could be even more beneficial, and that's where you come into play, because I've seen so many cool workouts that you do out there, and the way how you combine it with fun. That's the other thing. People think, well, to do a training and to get fit, it's something that's supposed to be not so much fun, and that's again where you do it totally different. So that's why I said, okay, you're a perfect candidate for Health, Happiness, and Planet, and again, the planet part, it's because you're out there in nature. So before we go into the questions that I have, could you tell us how did you actually get to where you are today, into, I would say, that niche, which is something that you don't see that often?
Yeah, definitely. I have to kind of decide where to start the story because obviously it could go way back. But I think the most important part to begin is when I started realizing I really had a love of nature and I didn't know what to do with it. I liked going out on hikes, and so I started researching jobs. I went to the community college in Austin and got a general studies of science degree because I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. And from there, I actually ended up taking a break from school and spending about a year traveling around the country, where I visited over 30 national parks, just living out of my car. And during that time, I really had a lot of time to just sit with myself and kind of figure out where my passions were and what I wanted to do with them. And I returned from that trip knowing that I wanted to pursue something more in the field of plants. So I was looking into botany, specifically trees were something that just really spoke to me through my time spent in nature. So I went to Texas A&M to get a degree in bioenvironmental science. Spent a little time in Panama where I learned about rainforest canopy research, and I discovered that climbing trees in the rainforest seemed like the most exhilarating thing to do. However, my time spent in Panama made me kind of realize that academia consisted of a lot of sitting inside and writing papers and studying, and it wasn't quite as much time outdoors as I had thought it to be initially. So from there, I was like, okay, what am I going to do with tree climbing? I don't know, but I really feel like I need to pursue it. So I moved across the country to Oregon, where I learned from a professional tree climber. He owns a school called Tree Climbing Planet, Tim Kovar. So I learned, I learned the ropes, right? I learned how to use gear, all these climbing techniques to get into the trees. From there, I thought the only thing that one would do with such a skill is to do tree work, right? Like be an arborist. So I dabbled in that for a little bit. I was up in the trees with the chainsaws and realized that the energy around that was, again, not really congruent with what I was looking for. It was, very serious, very kind of filled with ego, and it seemed like many folks really loved to cut down big trees, and the bigger the better. And that felt wrong to me. So from there, I moved back to Austin and just kind of wanting to connect with people more, as I'd spent a lot of time doing this kind of solo soul searching. I began a meetup group around nature, fitness, and play, and really began to see that there was a need for this just kind of playful movement exploration, this connection to nature, especially whenever you can do it while simultaneously connecting with other people. And since then, I've been kind of finding my path along this journey of getting people outside, getting them moving their bodies, and connecting with others in a playful way.
Wow, that's amazing. Amazing story. And it's really curious how your intuition can just draw you towards a specific direction, even though you do not know what that future holds. But okay, let me just trust my intuition, and I'm just going to continue that path and see what it's going to develop out of that. And then from that intuition, you will fall into other maybe rabbit holes that you say, hey, I never thought about that. Yeah, and maybe it's something totally unexpected. And just like what you're doing today, if you think back, I don't know, 5 years, 8 years, you would probably never think that you're doing what you're doing today. That's so magnificent. And I just was thinking about Panama because my dad, he lives in Panama. So I'm there also regularly. So I'm just thinking like, wow, that must be cool to be up there in that in those trees in Panama.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it can be a little harder to get into those trees because you don't have just one tree in a field and you're like, okay, I'm going to climb it. It's surrounded by jungle and vines and so it's a little more technical.
Yeah. And do you have to sometimes, if you're going up those trees, you have to like check if there's nothing on the tree that could maybe bite you, or if there's like a snake or anything? Because I think in those jungles in Panama, there could be quite a lot of creatures, more creatures than in the US probably, than in Austin.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, whenever you're talking about going into the jungle, there's many more things to be concerned about compared to here in Texas where I'm at. But it's just, something that you observe, that you're aware of, that you know what the risks are and that you're attentive to them. So
yeah. Okay, that's cool. And when you were doing the tree climbing in Panama, were you also barefoot like you are in Austin?
Not so much. I mean, I would walk through, the jungle trails barefoot, but the climbing that we were doing, you were attaching equipment to your shoes that you kind of needed to have some type of shoes on in order for the equipment to work. There were much more things to worry about as far as critters, and pokey things.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering, like, wow, because I'm a barefooter myself. That's why I was wondering, okay, I wonder if you really had that courage to be out there with so many little dangers that could be there. But I haven't tried it out yet myself. So my wife and I, we did a barefoot tour across Europe. I think in miles, it's probably about 6,500 miles that we walked barefoot. And it all started as an experiment. And we found out how much pleasure and happiness we had in that experiment and how our body reacted and how we actually were more attuned to nature. It took us a few years to get all of that kilometers together, but at the beginning, I maybe did not feel that much in a sense of the connection to nature. But after the third year, I noticed that I could feel the energies when I'm out there in nature. I'm in the cities as well. So if I'm in a city, I can sense if something good happened here or if something not so good happened, because I just feel the energy from the ground. But if I'm in nature and I'm walking by a tree and I just somehow feel like there's like this attraction between me and a specific tree. So I'm like, okay, let me just go over there and let me either touch you or hug you.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just felt like, wow, I'm just like getting to meet a new person. And you have like those butterflies in your belly when you're getting to know somebody new. And that same feeling I have nowadays when I'm walking in nature and the specific tree is like just calling me and I go there and I touch it and I'm like, wow, these butterflies. And it's like, I never felt that before, but that was something that I just realized now after being more barefoot for such a long time, and you get more attuned to the energy. And I don't know, have you had also similar experience?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, in a very literal sense, you're removing the layers between you and the earth. So having that contact really allows there to be an opening of a path of conversation, and not conversation in the way that we know it, in the way that we're, discussing right now, but more of an energetic conversation. And I too have realized that, especially whenever, I've been indoors a lot and I maybe have had, a lot of stressful events throughout the day. I kind of now instinctually go outside and take my shoes off and ground. And I always notice that I feel significantly more even killed, more just in tune with myself and with the earth. So it is definitely a real thing.
100%. Yeah. And we had also quite a few ailments before we started our experiments. And we had similar experience where we started noticing that our body just started healing much quicker. We had less inflammation in our body. So many things just disappeared. And we're like, wow, we really heal when we are in connection with Mother Nature.
Yes. Yes, we do. It's powerful.
So moving on to the questions about natural movement, because that's something that you speak a lot about. Could you explain to us a little bit, what is the definition of natural movement?
Yes, I explain this to folks quite often as natural movement. They're like, well, yeah, I mean, I know what both of those words mean, but what does it mean when you put those together? So natural movement, there was a man called Erwan Lacour who created a kind of system for natural movement that he called MoveNat. And he basically thought of our hunter-gatherer ancestors and the way that they would move in their daily lives just simply for survival. So they would need to be able to run and lift. Obviously, those are the things that most people focus on when they go to the gym, right? Like my running, okay, and I'm going to lift weights. Okay, great. I've got all my fitness. But there's so many other areas of movement that are neglected if you just focus on those things. So yes, running, lifting, carrying, climbing, balancing, jumping, ground movement, being able to go under and over obstacles, vaulting over things. So it's the full plethora of human movement that our bodies has been kind of evolutionarily adapted to perform.
Wow, that's amazing, because if I think about the way how I used to train before when I go to the gym, it was very like one-sided. Yeah, so it's either just like lifting a lot, but then if they would tell me stand on one leg, I'm like, okay, how does that go? Yeah, or if I would have to jump over something, I wouldn't probably even master that so elegantly. There's so many components, I think, to the natural movement that you get to be really more like almost like a ninja, where you can do so many things and you can really use your body so perfectly. And because I think many people train in one specific dimension. Yeah, either it's only cardio, let's say if you're just running all the time, but you don't do anything for strength, or another person might do only flexibility, but then you're not doing anything for strength or other aspects. So there's always like some component from being really fit that is missing. And I think with natural movement, it's really combining a lot of that together.
Yeah, there's this idea of humans being generalists as opposed to specifists, right? Like to have general capabilities in all modalities of movement as opposed to being really good at one thing. And I feel like especially with social media, for instance, of people practicing a skill so much that they are so good at it that it's very awe-inspiring, right? You see someone doing all these crazy flips with a kettlebell and you're like, wow, that's really cool. Um, so it's like sexy in that way, right? But
Yeah.
it's like, well, what about all the other movements? Like, I'm sure with all the focus that you're spending on this one thing, sure, you're getting really great at it, but all the other movements are going to be lacking. So how can
Yeah.
we kind of broaden that view and
Yeah.
incorporate more variety into your training?
Exactly. Yeah. And especially that you have so many ways that your joints and muscles can articulate that usually when you go to a gym and you sit at the bench press or the machine is for the overhead press or whatever machine you're using, but it's always in a specific direction meant for a regular average body, which is not maybe adjusted to your own body. And when you're using that machine, you're always using that same direction. And that was, I think, one of my things that I realized later. That was about 20 years ago. I was getting pretty strong as a bench press. So I was doing the bench press over and over and I was getting stronger. And then I'm thinking, well, I can lift so much on the bench press. I'm a super strong guy. And then somebody said, hey, let's see how many push-ups we can do. And I was like, holy cow, I couldn't even do like 5 push-ups. Yeah. And the other guys who couldn't bench as much as I could, they were doing like, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 push-ups. And like, how do you guys do that? Yeah, I couldn't do it because I noticed that, again, I had a lot of strength only in a specific angle. And if I did not have that angle and that bench and that bar and everything exactly in that environment, then I just did not have the strength for anything else. So I had lack of core muscles that would be working in synchronization with my movement. Yeah. So if you're doing the push-up on the floor, then you really have so many muscles that are acting together and they're all working as a team together. And if you're just doing the bench press alone, then you're just really activating maybe your pec muscles, your triceps, your shoulder muscles, but then all the rest of the muscles, they are maybe not as, I would say, active as if you would be doing a push-up on the floor. And when I see you, for example, climb those trees, it looks amazing how you do that. And I'm just thinking, I wonder how many muscles are you activating just in that one climb? Yeah, it's like, damn, it just sparked so many things in my head. So I'm like, wow, that's really a totally different way of training.
Yeah, I mean, the muscles are not intended to work in isolation, right? Like a leg extension machine where you're activating the quadriceps. Like the quadriceps never in the history of humans, except for within these past several decades when I don't know when they created leg extension machines, but the idea of just the quad being activated, the human body doesn't know what that is. That's not normal. The quad acts as, an assisting muscle to be able to perform a function. So the body gets really freaked out if you're just isolating single muscles. Like that's just not what they were intended to do.
Exactly. Just doing maybe barbell curls all the time. So you might get a bicep out of it, but are you able to use it properly if you need to climb something? Yeah. So that's the question. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. So we listed a couple of pros. What are the good things about natural movement? What would you say, if you think back of all moments and all your clients that you have about natural movement, what are the cons? What are things that one could maybe be careful about?
I really love this question because it's great you want to think of things from both different perspectives. And certainly there are some downfalls of practicing natural movement. One of them being is that you're probably going to look like a weirdo. You're probably going to get looks from people. I mean, when I was at my gym for the first time, I pulled out my 2x4s, long pieces of lumber. And people were looking at me kind of funny, and they like to poke fun. So looking a little silly, or at least not, you'll look different because society doesn't really accept natural movement as a valid way of training yet. Another thing is that it can be pretty hard to find, especially gym spaces that are suitable for this kind of training. I mean, obviously you can take this kind of training outdoors where it has actually evolved. However, if somebody's just getting into natural movement, it can actually be best to practice these things in a more controlled environment where there is a higher amount of predictability. But for practicing in gym spaces, there's just not a lot of options as far as climbing beyond, bars, like pull-up bars or something, which can be kind of unsafe depending on what you're practicing. And jumping, most gyms are not suitable for jump training when it comes to precision. The weights in a gym are all very perfectly shaped and they're made for you to be able to hold easily, right? If you think of the handle of a dumbbell or a kettlebell, So it's hard to find awkward things to lift, which is kind of part of what natural movement teaches, is being adaptable by varying all the different types of things that you work with. Let's see, some other downfalls. I can't really think of many beyond that, to be honest, because I think it's so suitable for many people. I will say, I thought another one, that you're probably going to end up doing something in your training that you don't like doing. Because there is so much, of all of the different skills, you probably are pretty bad at least one of them, at least initially. And so the practice of that skill, say like your jumping is really bad, but it's something that you'll need to train and you'll need to give it a little more focus so that it can be elevated to the level of your other strengths and skills. So it will involve you doing some training that you might not enjoy, at least until you get better at it.
Perfect. Very good. I could identify that it will not only get you stronger in your body, but it will probably also make you stronger mentally because you just stop caring about what other people think about you. And that, yes, that's right. And that's why I guess it's really to an advantage if somebody just takes things more on the, I would say on the play side, on the fun side, and not to take things so seriously. And if somebody's looking at you weird, so thinking like, hey, what are they doing? So it's like, you really have to work on that muscle. And that's what happened to me at the beginning when I started going without my shoes outside. I was quite worried about what other people were thinking or saying or looking. But then later I just say, hey, I just cannot be like that piece of gold that everybody's going to love you, or everybody's going to like you. And you cannot just make everybody happy. And that was, I think, one of the issues that I had when I was smaller, that I always wanted to make everybody happy and please everybody. And that's one thing that really you will probably also learn with natural movement, that just don't care what others say or think, just do your thing. And if that's what it's the right thing to do, then you got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you only get over that fear by doing it. I mean, you hear that all the time, but exposure really is the only way to overcome the fear. And of course, I've felt very awkward doing the stuff that I do out in public the first times I was doing it. But you do reach a point where you stop caring so much because you really love what you're doing. And it's that love is greater than your fears of the perceptions of others. Yeah,
exactly. That's so well said. I also do courses about change management, and that's exactly that point that you mentioned right now. If the pleasure of what you're doing is higher than the resistance that you have of all those things that you think, this is holding me back or that's holding me back. But if the pleasure, it's much, much higher than that, then it's absolutely easier to go on and do your thing. And do the natural movement, do what you think is right, and stop caring about what others think, which is something that is easy to be said, just to stop thinking what others think about it. But you do need a little bit of practice for those who worry too much about others' opinions.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Probably if it's a rainy day, you would opt to go to the gym. But if it's a sunny day and you could say, okay, today either I go to the gym or I go to outdoors to train, what would be your first option?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. I'm just kidding. It's a totally easy question because obviously I prefer to be outdoors. Whether or not you're an outdoor person or not, the body prefers to be outside. Although we do seek to feel a sense of comfort, and sometimes that can be kind of an appeal of going to an indoor space is, what the temperature is going to be like, and it's going to be dry. So that can be kind of alluring as a human to be like, I want to seek comfort, right? But the body needs to learn how to deal with all the different possibilities of all the different elements. So of course, if it's a good day outside, definitely want to be outside. However, even if it's not a good day outside, I think it's good to have the body exposed to, we're not just training the muscles, but we're also training your body's ability to adapt to changing climate, to cold, to heat. So I absolutely prefer going outside, and on a sunny day, you get that added benefit of sunlight exposure, being around trees. It's very uplifting.
Yeah. I think if I look back, all the moments when I needed a little bit more off time, like I'm working quite often in front of a computer, so I just feel that my body is requesting that. I have that pull, that intuition is telling me you got to go out there. So I already feel like that nervousness just building up in my gut. And then as soon as I go out and I start going to nature, it's like, whoa, it just all disappears. And I just start getting to the present moment. And I start looking around and I'm thinking, wow, I just forgot about all my emails I was doing. I forgot about the meeting that I have coming up because I'm just here in this beauty. And that's amazing.
Yeah, I find it easiest to be present while outdoors. Like it'll be very effortless to just find whether it's, you're looking at the clouds or there's a plant on the ground or like you're laying on the grass, just being able to tune into your senses, I feel like comes so much more naturally whenever you're in an outdoor space. And that's so important for those of us who are consistently and chronically overstressed to be able to just relax into the present, pay attention to the body. So important to get the parasympathetic nervous system activated in that way.
Absolutely. And also the part which you mentioned is super important for the listeners to know that if it's hot out there, it does not mean that's bad for you. And if it's cold out there, it does not mean it's bad for you either. So you do have to really expose your body sometimes to those temperatures, even though it's not your nice and cozy gym temperature that you're used to every time you go into a closed environment, because your body really learns how to adapt. Your body is a perfect machine. It will be able to cope with it.
Yeah.
And tell me more about the word rewild, because you have used that also quite often in your Instagram account, and I really like that word. Could you explain more about it?
Yes. So rewilding in a human context, as it's often used more in an environmental context about turning, kind of returning an environment back to its natural state. But the same can be said for the human context, where we are wild creatures. Only relatively recently in the span of human evolution have we become civilized. And rewilding is about returning ourselves to a more natural, a more primal state, but in a modern context, right? Like I'm not expecting people to, quit their jobs and to go run out and live in the woods by any means. But rewilding is about how can you take these kind of ideas, these principles of the way that humans used to live, and how can you integrate those into your life now, where you're at?
Yeah, that's amazing. It's really like going back to the roots somehow, no? It feels like, we're just going back to how our ancestors used to live. Yeah. And somehow I think that's more the path to health and happiness than all of that craziness today with a lot of technology and everybody stuck on their phones and we are just always in indoor environments with artificial lights and lack of movement. So we're just going the opposite direction from rewilding. So it's really like rewinding, like if you're rewinding a tape and you're just going back to your roots. Yeah. So getting away from all that technology and going back to your roots.
Yes. And I mean, I do want to say, I don't think there's a problem with technology, right? Here we are. This conversation is enabled by it and it's wonderful. But I do think that technology has developed so quickly, our evolution hasn't had time to keep up with it. So we are still very much these primal beings. And now you have these shiny objects that are so distracting. And I think it's overwhelming our genetics.
Yeah. 100%. And if I think about it, it's probably technology is almost like money. So if you have a lot of money, then you could either do good things with the money or you could do really bad things with money. And same with technology. So you could use technology to your advantage. Like, for example, we're creating this wonderful episode here. We got to know also and connect with each other through Instagram. And there's so many good things that you can really do with technology. But then again, you could do the flip side. You could just use it and just litter your brain by looking all day, hours into TikTok and doing stuff that you're thinking, okay, how does that add value to a life, maybe of a teenager who's spending 3, 4, 5 hours on TikTok. So that's really where when one can say, okay, how do we find that balance? To use technology in the right way. And same like money. If we have money, to use it also in the right way. That it's going to benefit for us and for society and for all of us and for the planet.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's an ongoing learning process that is so unique to the individual, right? But at the same time, I feel like we're all kind of going through it together.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's more like probably we're going into this experimental phase, to see how this whole thing is going to evolve. And then later we're going to do like this little correction to say, okay, now we have known what this can do to us. And then we will start hopefully realizing that up to what point should we use technology and where are the limits.
Yeah, certainly. We're part of a mass experiment. It's uncontrolled.
That's right. That's right. Time for a quick break to mention that the sponsor of this podcast is Wave Business Excellence Footprint, a digital training company deeply committed to your career development, personal growth, and the well-being of our precious planet. Dive into a wealth of knowledge with over 20 courses available on our website, www.wave-bef.com, tailored for both managers and employees aspiring to become tomorrow's leaders. One of our best-selling courses is the Presentation and Communication Skills Training, perfect for those creating and delivering presentations in their companies. Whether through video conference or live meetings, if you want to convey your message effectively and do an outstanding job, this course equips you with the skills to be a better creator and presenter. Check out the testimonials on our website. The results speak for themselves. During my time in the corporate world, I often wished I had the opportunity to access such courses at the beginning, making my learning experience quicker. And now, one further topic before we jump back to the conversation. For those of you resonating with the themes of health, happiness, and planet, discover information about our 3-day retreat in Spain by reaching out to my team at the email address hhp@wave-bef.com. You will obtain further information about our life-changing retreat held once a year, together with some of our remarkable podcast guests. Each retreat is unique, leaving you energized with a set of simple tools to take control of your health and happiness sustainably. And the best part, you will be surrounded by like-minded individuals, ending the retreat with a personal action plan shared regularly within the group. To jump back to our topic though, there's one added component that you have done to the natural movement, and that is to add play to it. And that is so awesome to see when I'm looking at the groups that you have in Austin and the things that you do in order to activate the human body to move around and to get fit. You add a lot of play in there. And I think that's also pretty nice because people become again like the goofballs as they used to be when they were children. Yeah. And I think that we forget when we become grown-ups. And it's like, again, probably part of that rewilding that you get back to becoming a child again. Yeah. So that you become that playful self and that you thought, okay, I thought I closed that door and I became a grown-up and I'm not supposed to enter that door anymore because now I'm a grown-up and people are going to laugh at me if I'm going to be acting like a kid again. So tell me about that component of adding play into your natural movement.
So if you think about a baby animal, right? Like say you have a baby tiger, okay? The baby tiger is kind of training through play in order to become an adult tiger, right? So, I mean, it's like play fighting with its cubs, it's like stalking around the grass, and it's jumping. And this is an instinctual thing that happens in all animals that they learn through play. And humans are no different. So if we think of a playscape, right? Like these places that we take our kids and they run and they jump and they climb and they crawl, and they are effectively learning to do what adult humans are supposed to do, right? Because adult humans used to have to do all those things to survive, but now they don't necessarily need to, but it's still in there. It's still ingrained. It's still instinctual for them to play so that they can learn. So it only makes sense that through play, we can learn so much more effectively. Not only that, I just feel that the world has become such a serious place, and I think stress is a really big problem for the world. I don't feel like we know how to handle our stress very well as a population, and I feel like there's a lot of strain on our healthcare system that comes from that as a result. And I think being able to laugh and connect and move your bodies, like those are so important for long-term health, and that can combat so many illnesses. It can prevent so many illnesses. So a blend of teaching people skills and de-stressing so that folks can be healthier and happier. I think there's a brilliant connection between play and movement.
Yes. That's so good. Especially if you think about stress, it probably is like the trigger of so many illnesses that people get in their body. I mean, stress itself is maybe not so bad if you would get back to become calm again. But if you have that constant stress that we have today in society, that you're always stressed out, I would say almost 24/7, because you're stressed when you're in traffic, you're stressed when you get to work, and then you're stressed again because you're in traffic getting back home. And then you're at home and then you're stressed because your kids are screaming and you need to get things on time. You need to get them out to their next activity. So you're just constantly on that stress wheel. And at some point of time, your body is going to say, hey, let's take a break from the stress. So your body decides, well, how am I going to stop this crazy body do everything what it's doing? So it's just going to throw something at you, and then you get sick with something, and then you say, hey, finally you're sitting down and you can recuperate a little bit from all that stressy couple of weeks you gave me. Yeah. So, and that's why I think it's like the safe haven, like when you create those groups and people can go there and become the inner child again and can laugh and play and could you tell us how usually you get to find those things that you want to do during that session? Do you have like a program that you follow, or is it something that you just intuitively make up? How does that work?
So it's kind of the structure of, so I host Adult Recess is what I call it, and we meet weekly. And the structure has kind of came about organically. And that's just been kind of through my own experimentation of how things flow well with groups. But I always start our play session with an introduction because connecting with people is one of the most important things and one of the reasons why we're gathering. So some introductions and then some warm-up games, because I learned pretty quickly on when I had all the adults come and then I'm like, okay, and now we're going to play tag. And everyone just starts sprinting and people are like, oh gosh, I pulled something. We have to warm up the adults, they're not just ready to go.
Yeah.
So incorporating some warm-up games. And then it kind of varies. I do utilize Google a lot to research different games. I mean, a lot of the websites that I look at are, for PE teachers and for like youth ministry camps. There's a lot of really great resources, none of them directed towards adults, but they work nonetheless. Okay. And I also got some really fun games. Oh, I don't have my book by my side, but there's this book called Connecting Kids with Nature, I believe it's called. And it's specifically games that they would kind of facilitate at a wilderness school for kids, where it involved connecting with the earth and like games to play in the woods and blindfolds for, different sensory experiences. So there's multiple resources that I pull from.
That is so cool. And are there also some activities that involve tree climbing with your clients, or is this something only for more the advanced clients?
Yeah, so I've only done one actual tree climbing class, and that's something that I've been a little bit kind of weary on. I don't know, the technicality of that as far as insurance and and because it is something that is inherently high risk.
Yeah. So
I've been I still am going to lean more into how to adapt that to something that other folks can participate in. So I'm still working that piece out. We do climb at recess. I always meet at my favorite tree in Austin, and we frequently, everyone will just crawl up in it. We'll take our group photo. But that's not part of our games.
Yeah. Okay. I was very curious because today many kids get a lot of barriers from their parents because the parents like, oh, don't do that because you're going to get hurt, or don't climb that tree because you're going to get hurt. So there's so many things that when you grow up as a child, you just think, okay, I cannot do this, I cannot do that. And then when you're grown up, you'll never get an idea that I would like to climb that tree because you already have all that mental barriers and are thinking your mom saying to you, look, you're going to fall, this is going to happen, and so forth. For many people, it's really, how do I overcome that that narrative that you have that you're not able to climb that tree because it's going to be dangerous for you. But then on the other side, as you've never done that before since the last, 30, 40 years. So now if your clients start climbing trees, it could be tricky because you do not know yet their fitness level. You don't know how flexible they are, how strong they are, how's their balance. Yeah. So you probably need to have like a program where you have an assessment sheet to say, okay, if you have proper balance to a certain level, and if you have a certain strength to a certain level, if you have a certain agility to a certain level. Then we're going to get to the next level, which is going to be climbing that small tree over there. Yeah. So it's like preparing them for that first task. Yeah. And not just like saying, okay, let's all try our best, because probably, like you said, somebody can just run and they already pulled their hamstring because they haven't run or warmed up since a while. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's definitely a really good idea. Definitely there's a big variance in people's bodily awareness, of just knowing how the body is moving through space. And that's something that you need to have a high degree of if you're going to be climbing trees, especially as you increase the height. So
exactly. Yeah. And on top of it, I was just wondering that how do you test how stable those branches are? Because I guess some people would not even know, is this branch going to hold me? Yeah. So what is the level of weight that you could put on those branch before it cracks? So how do you do that on your side? You already have, I guess, the intuition to know, okay, that branch looks like it's dried out. I'm not going to step on it because it's going to crack, or how is it?
So there's definitely some just kind of mental awareness as far as knowing, say, this is an oak tree. I know that oak trees, it really has really strong wood, so the limbs are going to be very supportive. So there's a little bit about knowing the type of tree. Some of them grow really fast, and so those branches are more likely to break off. There's also the observation of when you get to a tree and you want to climb it, you should probably take a look at it first. Before, I almost got into a tree that had this giant paper wasp nest with wasps flying all around it. And that would have been bad to have gotten in that tree and not realize that was there. Yeah. But looking for dead limbs, whenever you're climbing or before you climb, to look to see which limbs don't have any foliage, which ones have like any sort of decay on them, like any fungus. All of that kind of means that it's not living anymore, and that you should really be wary whenever you're putting your weight on it. But I think the most important thing is actually that conversation. That's you're feeling your body, and the tree is feeling you while you're feeling the tree, right? And so you guys are communicating, and you are fully present. Like as you are transferring your weight onto a limb, you are hyper aware of what it feels like, what's the texture like. That's why I climb barefoot, is I want to feel if I have a good grip. I want that instant feedback. You can feel if it's starting to give, or if it's really firm and sturdy. So it's just an ongoing conversation.
Wow, that is so amazing, especially you have so many senses in your body, from your feet to your hands to every single layer of skin that you have in your body. And to really sense all of that with nature and getting all that feedback, and the feedback that your hands and your feet and everything is sending to your brain, and your brain back into into all your muscles and then back to the tree. So it's almost like a symphony just going on right there just by climbing one tree.
It's so complex, but yet it happens all so smoothly without our conscious awareness. Yeah.
Wow. We spoke about your events that you do every week with your clients. What has been the feedback that you received so far from them?
Well, just that they have this space to be able to be a kid again, and how fulfilling that is for them. The connections that people have made have been one of the most fulfilling things for me personally, of the friendships that have started from people just breaking down the barriers between each other and playing together. It's the best way to meet people, and without, drinking alcohol, going out late at night. And with the natural movement piece, people being able to focus on skill-based training as opposed to aesthetic-based training. I know for me personally, that was a really big shift that I experienced. And it's so much more deeply satisfying to be able to move your body from a place of what can I do, like what can I accomplish, as opposed to how can I look. And that's going to be something that is much more long-lasting than the kind of shallow aesthetic that drives a lot of people to the gym.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that if you do it only for the looks, and you, let's say, pump a lot of iron, you might look good. But then if you would have to do all that movements parts to be agile, to be flexible, to have balance, then you will notice that you cannot do many things. And when you do it the other way around, that you actually focus on having more balance, you focus on being stronger in doing certain things, like when you climb trees, or when you do your crawling, or when you do pulling, all these activities that you do with natural movement, then as a side effect, you start getting a better body anyway. So your muscles get a certain tone, a certain strength, because you are now able to do certain things that you can only do if your muscles adapt to that. So I think that that's probably from the order, the best thing to do, to be able to do certain things, and then your muscles and your body will just adapt to that particular activity that you're doing. In your case, one can see the muscle tone, and when you're doing those exercises and you're doing the natural movement, and many people might think, okay, did you already get that tone from pumping iron, or did you get that tone because you're doing all that natural movement? Yeah, so I assume it's probably from the natural movement side.
Well, I will say that prior to finding natural movement, I was very into weightlifting. Like, that was my thing. I was into the bodybuilding stuff. You know, I did all of the crazy exercises to try to make my butt big. Like, it was, and when I look back on that, I'm like, wow, that's kind of cringy, you know? Like, it was all based on, like, me wanting my body to look a certain way. But that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about natural movement now, is because that led me down a very not good path that really kind of disrupted my relationship with my body and with food and with training. Natural movement has made such a big impact on me for one reason being that. So I feel very strongly that, I hope to help other people who've experienced something similar.
Fantastic. And a question regarding body weight movement and natural movement. Is it very similar or is it the same? How would you differentiate those two?
That's a good question. Natural movement definitely entails lots of body weight movement. I mean, the foundation of natural movement is just being able to move around on the ground, right? From different sitting postures, being able to get up and down off the ground. But natural movement does add load. So once you're, good at getting up and down off the ground, then you're adding in, what about with added weight? Also just being able to deadlift heavy objects, being able to carry a person, all of that is natural movement as well. But I will say a majority of natural movement is body weight training.
Okay.
Yeah, so
great.
The jumping and the climbing and all that, yeah.
Perfect, because I was just thinking about that because I think about 35 years ago, I was also a lot into bodybuilding, pumping iron, and later I started having a lot of issues like with shoulder pain or elbow pain and pain here, pain there. And as soon as I switched and I started doing more body weight training, I'm thinking, hey, I am just as strong, but I just don't have those pains anymore. Yeah, so all that shoulder pain, elbow, everything started getting much, much better. And my body was really working in harmony together with all the other muscles. And I was not just focusing on one specific muscle for that one specific training.
Yeah.
So, yes, yeah.
Well, if you think of our hunter-gatherer ancestors, they weren't like building shelters every day of their lives, So like the lifting of heavy objects, it is very important, but again, the variety of the movement, right? Also the volume. We're not lifting rocks and logs every single day as, our hunter-gatherer ancestors, but sometimes, yes.
Yeah. And I think the word variety is very, very important because your body needs a variety in movement as well as variety in the foods. Yeah. If you eat every day the same thing, it's like, okay, I'm getting sick of it. And your body probably will say, hey, I cannot see any more that one specific type of food. So if you do a variety of foods, then you will also balance the nutrients, balance the vitamins and everything that you get so you don't have any type of deficiencies. So the same kind of deficiencies you might get if you do not move certain way or in certain direction. Because I'm just thinking about one example that I had. I had two computer screens and one was a little bit more to the left. So I was always going with my head to the left and to the center, to the left, to the center. So that was my movement range when I was working. But then at some point of time, I think it's weird. When I turn my head to the right, why don't I have that mobility anymore to the right? And it's like, because too much monotony. I'm just always looking to the left to my other monitor. So at the end, I think, okay, I'm really not doing that movement that my neck needs to have the full range of movement. And the same thing, I guess, in society. A lot of people are sitting throughout the day. They're sitting at work, sitting in the car, sitting everywhere, sitting in the movie house, sitting when they have dinner and breakfast and lunch. So it's a sitting society. And then, what happens to all the other muscles and articulations of your body that are there to be used, but they're not being used because you're only using one specific position the whole day. Yeah.
I will say we're getting damn good at sitting.
The
species as a whole, like our bodies are adapting to being better sitters because that's
exactly
those demands.
Wow. So we're becoming subject matter sitters. We're experts in sitting.
Yeah, we're getting really good at it.
Wow.
Eventually our bodies are going to start morphing, like the flexors are going to get all short and we're just going to be hunched over and that's just going to be like
and our fingers will get longer, like extraterrestrial fingers, so they can get all the keyboards and just type as quickly.
Wow, what a world to ponder. Huh?
Yeah. Wow. So, and that's why I'm sure that there will be a demand for rewilding because people will say, okay, we cannot go that direction because we need the balance and still staying attuned with nature, staying attuned and true to our body to provide our body with the nourishment and nutrition it needs, not only in food, but in movement. So, there comes my next question. Like, there's one thing about strength, one thing about flexibility, about mobility, all of that. What about endurance? What do you do when it comes to endurance?
My personal favorite thing for endurance is trail running. I find that to be a very natural movement. I mean, if you think about how some folks will be on a treadmill and it's just kind of this steady state and it gets this bad rap of like, oh, I don't like running on the treadmill. I was like, of course you don't. It's super boring. But if you take that running outdoors where literally every step that you're running through a trail, there's that awareness, that presentness, because you have to be analyzing over and over again every single placement of your foot. For folks who don't like running, I feel like that is a great option to do instead of running on a treadmill.
Excellent. That's something I still have to work on. I do not like doing too much cardio work. Sometimes I was thinking if I do Tabata in my training, if that's actually going to count as cardio. What would you say about that?
Well, as far as endurance, I would say that wouldn't be ideal because Tabata isn't that you have very short periods of high intensity exercise followed by rest, and then you do that on repeat.
Yeah.
How long do you do that for? A pretty short period of time, right?
True. Yeah, probably like 20 minutes.
Yeah. There's definitely a difference between, the endurance where you're working for, 30 minutes to an hour or more. And there's definitely a lot of books and literature that talk about how the human species has evolved to be long distance runners. Like Born to Run is the most common one that I hear about, right? Where we have this incredible endurance capacity, and we've been able to outrun prey as a means of catching them. So I do think that there is a place for longer distance running when it comes to cardiorespiratory training.
We're almost coming to the end of our episode, but I'm sure now my listeners are super, super curious about your background. You have certifications in the Move Nation L3 training. Do you spell it out MoveNat or is it Movement Nation?
So it's actually MoveNat. So it stands for
MoveNat.
Move
Okay.
Naturally. Yeah.
Ah, okay, good. I learned something new today.
Yeah.
Great. MoveNat, level 3 trainer. Then you also did the forest therapy guide and the play facilitator. So could you give us just a summary on what does that entail, that background, that study, that certification?
Yeah. So MoveNat has created 3 different levels of certifications of the different skills that they teach, obviously getting more and more challenging with each level that you pass. They also have an aquatics certification and a combatives certification because those are, again, all of the human movement, right? Being able to swim, being able to fight, and then all of the other natural movement skills that we've already discussed earlier today. So I found MoveNat. This is just about 2 years ago that I sprung and got the level 1, level 2 certification. And I knew that this was it for me. Like it blended my love of fitness and movement with my love of nature and being able to move well in nature. So ever since then, I've been pretty gung-ho about natural movement and really making that my primary training myself, and then also how I like to train other people. Yes.
Fantastic.
So
One thing I have to mention about that, I looked into the website from MoveNat and I was looking at some videos, like some introduction videos about what they do with the people there when they get their certification. And I was thinking like, holy cow, they're pretty tough cookies out there.
Yeah. So specifically the level 3 is notoriously very challenging amongst folks in the MoveNat world, because that's like I think it's 5 days long. You're out in the wilderness, so it's actually outdoors. A series, like every single day you have these tests of your physical abilities where you're learning new skills and then pretty much immediately putting them to the test, because to have the recognition as being a MoveNat trainer, you need to be able to show skills to be able to teach them, right? Because they're trusting you to be able to spread this knowledge with others. So it is very, not only physically tough, but very mentally tough as well.
Yeah.
But it's highly worth it. I mean, anytime you take on something big and challenging and daunting that you're not certain you can do, and then you accomplish it, every time that happens, you just get more and more confident in yourself and in your abilities, and you become a better person.
Yeah, fantastic. So it really shows and proves that if you push yourself a little bit outside of your comfort zone, that's where progress happens.
Definitely. And you remember those things the most, right? When you think
Yeah.
back of the memories that really stick out in your brain, oftentimes they're ones that maybe sucked while they were happening, but that emotional response really stays there in the mind. Very memorable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, fantastic. And for the forest therapy, and this one I'm sure it's less intense
Oh
on
yeah.
the on the body.
Yes.
How is that one?
Yeah, talk about yin and yang with these things that I'm
Yeah.
into because, yeah, forest therapy. So I was training to become a guide with the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy. They have a 6-month long online program and then, an in-person immersion. And if some folks never heard of nature forest therapy, but some folks have heard of forest bathing, although still quite a few have not. But forest bathing is this practice that originated in Japan in the 1980s. Shunrin Yoku, the Japanese word for it. And it kind of came about whenever they realized in the 1980s that the population was highly stressed, was really causing a lot of money on the healthcare system. So they put a lot of money into research into ways to make the population healthier. And they found that nature immersion out competed all of the other things that they tried as far as healing capacity. And so now in Japan, in fact, since the 1980s, you can go to the doctor, they can write a script for nature therapy, give it to you. There's forests that are designated for this purpose, and there are trained nature therapy guides that facilitate this connection and this complete present awareness in the natural surroundings.
That's so astounding. I'm sure we could just probably dive in another episode deep into that rabbit hole
Yeah.
because I'm sure a lot of people can picture, yeah, okay, we will walk in the forest, but what does the therapy guide actually do and how do they assist them in those invitations of doing certain things in the forest? So definitely we could keep that for next conversation,
Yeah.
but it's good that you gave us at least now a little bit of a summary of what forest therapy means. So the next thing was, I think, a play facilitator. That's another nice added one.
Yeah, well, so I actually don't have a certification in play facilitation. I've just kind of designated myself as a play facilitator. I have Googled play facilitator certifications, and I don't think they exist. So I might just have to create one.
Hey, exactly. Blue ocean strategy. You gotta
Yeah,
you gotta create your own certification.
yeah.
I'm actually a Lego serious play facilitator, and that you might have found in the internet. This is more in the context of the business world. So I used to be over 20 years in the corporate world, working as a consultant and working also in senior management. So when I came across that Lego serious play facilitator certification, I was thinking, okay, that's something totally different to what I've done before in my workshops. And you really come with Lego pieces and you start doing the workshop together with your colleagues at work. In the corporate world, this was in the finance world where I started that. And it was amazing how we did our projects based on how we were able to create those models with the Lego. Wow. And you do get like a training on how you're supposed to facilitate that and how do you use the Legos in a way to ask the right questions and create the right tasks that you would give to your people in the workshop. So it's something that I always look back and say, hey, that was so amazing. And when I saw this on your profile that you're also a play facilitator, I thought, oh, maybe it's something similar to what I was doing with Lego, but of course transferred into the movement world. But it's good to know that this does not exist yet, a certification, and that you will be hopefully creating one in the future.
I think the world needs it.
Yeah, definitely. For that, I'm actually getting to my next question, which is a good flow into that, which is to ask you, what are your future plans or projects that you might have?
Yes, I am really wanting to lean more into in-person immersive experiences because connection and community are two of the things that have really driven what I do is, being able to connect with other people and getting people outside. So I have a lot of folks who follow me on Instagram that aren't able to attend my in-person events here in Austin. And so I would like to provide some more opportunities for people to connect, kind of in a retreat setting where we get outside, probably more of like a definitely more wild. So not, the retreat where you're in these bougie, cottages in the woods, but kind of a camp out type experience.
Cool. Yeah.
Yes, but looking for ways to connect folks from different areas of the world, so that everyone can participate in this kind of energy that I'm providing.
Well, I'm in.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So it's really, as you probably heard already, it's all connected and we're all connected. So that means that you're not only connecting the participants with each other, but you're also connecting all of them with nature. It's so much exponentially higher the value that you can get from those events that hopefully you will create in the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. Therefore, we come to the final question, or maybe there are two questions, but they're pretty quick. The second final question is, what is your definition of happiness?
This is a good question, and I don't know if I had actually ever answered this question for myself before. When I was reflecting on this, I ended up asking myself, what's the difference between happiness and joy, right? Because I feel like they're two kind of separate things. And I feel like joy is found in these little moments of being present, right? Like finding joy and looking at a flower or feeling the sun on your skin. But happiness feels much deeper to me. I feel like happiness is living in alignment with your purpose and being able to express your full authenticity to the world. And I could elaborate, but I feel like that sentence right there is pretty perfect for my definition of happiness.
That's a very nice definition, and that's something that I used to ask a lot of people since I was a small child. And that's why also the podcast is called Health, Happiness, and Planet. So happiness was a very key word for me when I was small, because sometimes I could sense what other people feel, and that is sometimes not easy as a child, because you could feel if somebody's angry, you can feel if somebody's happy, you feel somebody who's frustrated. So I get all that input from everybody's feelings. And I was always intrigued and thinking about, why are some people so happy and others are so miserable or so sad? And then I started asking that question throughout the last 30 years, where I was actually making a project out of it, which was the Happiness Project. And I'm writing a book about it too. And therefore, I have so many data points about people who I asked, what are the things that make you happy? And what you just summarized today about your definition, it fits so well into all of that I've heard in the last couple of years. And thanks for sharing that. And I do have the final question, and that's, where can my listeners find you and learn more about you?
Yeah, great. I am most active on Instagram. Would love for folks to give me a follow there. My name on Instagram is Allison, Allison, Wanderland, Wander, and then the number 3 at the end. Instagram's a great place to get in contact with me, and also, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, you can also visit my website, rewildaustin.com. Although currently it's still under construction, because us folks who love nature, getting the technology pieces in place can be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm going to put all of that in the show notes. Thanks a lot for that, Allison. And wow, that was an amazing conversation. Time went by so fast, and we covered quite a lot of topics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And maybe we see each other soon again for the next episode.
Yes, we got to talk about forest bathing.
Definitely. And I'm sure by then, maybe you already have your certification program, and then we can talk about that too.
Yeah, there definitely will be plenty more to talk about in future episodes.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you, and see you soon again.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. What an incredible conversation with Allison. Here are the key highlights from our talk. Point number 1. Natural movement involves a variety of movements such as running, lifting, carrying, climbing, balancing, jumping, and ground movement. Learning point number 2. Incorporating play into fitness can help combat stress and promote long-term health. Number 3. Being outdoors and connected with nature is important for overall well-being. Number 4. Rewilding involves returning to a more primal state and incorporating the principles of how humans used to live into our modern life. And the learning nugget number 5 is that tree climbing can be a high-risk activity and requires careful consideration and adaptation for different participants. Don't forget to check the show notes for links and details on where to find Allison. Now, I'm curious which part of this episode resonated the most with you. I value your feedback, and I would love to hear from you. Please take a moment to rate, subscribe, and share this episode with anyone who could benefit from this content. Your support means the world to me, and it motivates me to keep creating content that adds value to your life. Looking forward to connecting with you in the next episode. Big hugs, everyone.